We've all been shown so many videos of advanced artists drawing straight from their imaginations like it's nothing. After seeing that over and over again on social media, it's easy to think that's how we should practice too. I used to think that too. I would avoid using references, try to draw everything from my imagination, hate the result, and then just give up. But what if references are not the problem? What if the real problem is only using references to copy? So stick around until the end, because I will show you how I practice from references by simplifying and stylizing them, and how that slowly helped me build the skill to draw more from imagination. Quickly before we get into it, the drawing footage you are seeing is a mix of me working on a new pattern design project and some recent lessons from my drawing membership where I guide students through reference drawing practice. So it actually connects very well with what we're going to talk about today. And if you want to try these kind of practice yourself, I've put a free reference practice starter guide in the description. As you watch me draw these pattern design, it might look like I just had an idea in my head, sat down and started drawing everything from imagination. And I know from the outside it can look really easy, but I want to be very honest with you. I can draw this way now because I've been drawing for many years, almost over 15 years. And a lot of those years I was drawing almost like 15 hours a day very easily. And that's the part people don't always see. So if you're just starting out, please don't compare your beginner stage to my result after years and years of drawing. Because this kind of drawing from imagination skill doesn't just come from nowhere. When I draw my illustrations, I'm usually pulling from things I've practiced many times before. I've practiced drawing so many animals. I've also practiced a lot of still life objects. I've drawn different plants, desserts, drinks, and all these kind of little elements again and again. So now when I want to create an illustration, I don't always need to search for a reference, not because I was born with that ability, but because I've already built sort of a visual memory in my head. For example, this penguin illustration was inspired by a ski trip I took with my brother. At that time, I needed to create just an animal illustration and I chose to draw penguins. So you can see the pose came from the feeling of me and my brother skiing, and the final colors came from the ski clothes we were wearing, and the penguin character design came from just a lot of my previous animal drawing practice. So the final illustration looks like a very original idea, but really it was just a combination of different things I've had experienced, observed, and practiced. And I think this is what drawing from imagination really is. It's not creating something from nothing. It's combining those little pieces you've collected over time. That's why reference practice matters a lot to me. Every time I sit down and study a flower or an animal, I was giving my brain more material to work with later. So when people say I want to draw from imagination, I don't think the answer is to stop using references. I think the answer is to use reference in a way that helps you actually remember, understand, and reuse what you're drawing. But this is also where a lot of people get stuck, because using references can help you build that visual memory, but only if you're not just copying them without thinking. Because I see a lot of people draw with references, but I see them trying to make their drawing look exactly like the photo, like the same shape, the same colors, same details. Of course, that can help you practice observation a little bit, but if your goal is to eventually draw more from imagination, just copying the photo is just not enough. I mean, I just don't think that would work. At least it didn't work for me. Because you're not asking yourself, what am I learning from this? You're only asking, does my drawing look the same? And that makes your drawing practice like a different kind of practice. It's just you're just trying to copy. You're not practicing. You're not studying. So for me, the goal of drawing practice, the reference practice, is really not to create a perfect copy. The goal is to build visual memory. So later when I want to draw something on my own, I can remember, oh yes, I've seen this kind of shape before, I've painted this kind of color palette before, I've practiced this kind of animal before. But if you only copy the photo without really thinking about it, then of course you're not gonna remember much from your drawing practice. It just doesn't really become yours. That's why when I use a reference photo, I try to simplify it, stylize it, and understand it in my own way. For example, inside one lesson in my drawing membership, my membership community, I was showing my students how to use color to capture the feeling of the reference photos. So instead of looking at the photos of the houseplants and try to copy the exact colors, you need to ask, what kind of feeling does this image give me? Fresh, warm, quiet? And then I demonstrate how to choose colors based on that feeling. So then we're not copying the photo, so we are making the color decision. And because we made that decision ourselves, we can remember it better. So later when we want to create a green illustration, I might remember, oh yes, I once painted this kind of soft green palette from a reference photo and I really liked that feeling. Then you can pull that idea from your memory and use it in a new drawing. Another example is another lesson inside my drawing membership. We were practicing drawing animals from references, but I'm not asking my students to copy the animal exactly. Let's say for this cat photo, from the same reference, I demonstrated how I create so many different kind of cat characters. You can see the reference is still there, it's the same reference, but I'm changing the shape, the proportions, and the feeling of the character. And that's the part that really matters, because you're not just looking at the photo and copying what you see, you're learning how to turn what you see into something you understand. And also because once you simplify a reference, you start to remember it. Once you stylize it, you start to make it your own. And that's how reference practice slowly become imagination practice. So the real problem is not using references. The problem is using references only to copy without making any choices, without thinking. So now let's talk about what this kind of reference photo drawing exercise actually looks like for me. There's this example that got really a lot of attention on Instagram. So let's start with this study. The first thing we need to do is to remind ourselves our goal is not to make a perfect copy of the photo. The goal is to sort of train our eyes, our memory, and our ability to draw these kind of things more freely later. I always say to my students, like, the goal of my teaching is to eventually help you to basically draw whatever you see around you. So in the lesson, when I'm demonstrating, I show my students, when I look at a house plan reference, I start with sketching out the big shapes. I look at the whole plant first, like what's the general feeling of the shape. And then after that, I break it down into smaller shapes. Where are the main shape of the leaves? Which direction are they growing? Which leaves are important for sort of showing the character of the plant? And this is where simplifying comes in. Because we are not cameras, we do not need to draw every leaf exactly where it is. Also, if there's a certain leaf shape that doesn't look beautiful or like memorable to me, I can just leave it out, right? So instead of copying the photo, I'm really asking, what do I want to remember from this plant? What makes this plant feels like this plant? And why these reference inspired me to draw? Like, what is about this plant that makes it interesting to draw? And that's the part I want to keep in my drawing. And that is really a much better way to practice from reference photos, because now we are not copying, we are like understanding. And another important thing I do when I'm doing my reference photo drawing exercise is stylizing. I think somehow this is a more advanced skill, so I don't really teach my students that until we reached sort of, I think, level 3, or maybe let's say like level 6 inside my drawing membership. I'm starting to teach them how to draw animals from references. So I'm gonna drag another lesson out to give you an example. So I'm using the same cat reference photo, but I'm not really drawing the cat only one way. I showed how the same cat can become different little characters. Maybe I can like make the head bigger so the cat looks cuter. Maybe we can change how the eyes, the mouth, anyway, like the facial expression, how we draw those, we can change those. So the reference photo is just helping me, it's like inspiring me, and I'm still learning from the real cat photo, but I'm still making a lot of choices. I'm deciding what to exaggerate, what kind of feeling I want the character to have, And this is what I mean by stylizing a reference. You're not really asking how do I copy this cat, you're asking how can I use this cat as a starting point and turn it into my own character. I think it's because I practiced this kind of reference drawing enough. I just felt like I begin to remember shapes better. I start to memorize what kind of colors work together, and I think I also start to sort of explore the kind of drawing style that I personally enjoy. I mostly like to draw cute human characters, animal characters, and that's because I sort of practiced a lot of those stylizing animal human characters from reference photo, and then I kind of just figured out there's a certain way of body proposition that I like. That's how I sort of developed my own character drawing style. Anyway, the main idea is that you don't copy the reference photo, you make decisions around the reference photos. And that is what helps those things stay in your visual library. So later, when you want to draw something from imagination, you're not starting from nothing. You can pull out all those little pieces you have practiced before. And that is also how I think about this kind of pattern design I'm working on in this video, because from the outside it might look like I'm just drawing cute ideas from imagination, but to me drawing from imagination is really a kind of storytelling. I'm usually drawing to tell little stories from my life. For example, one of these pattern design idea came from my very recent bad habit of scrolling on my phone before going to sleep. So I wanted to turn that into a little animal illustration. Another idea for the other pattern came from me trying to build a better skincare habit after my shower time, which lately has been happening after washing my hair. So I imagined a little cat wrapped in a hair towel doing a skincare in front of a mirror. These ideas feel original, but they are not coming from nowhere. They come from real life, and also they come from practice, because I've practiced drawing cute animals a lot, and I've practiced drawing those kind of little everyday objects. I practice things like how to draw mirrors, bottles, towers, desserts, all those kind of small elements that show up in cozy illustrations. So when I want to tell a little story, I have more things I can pull from my visual library. And this is why I believe references are not the problem. The problem is when we only use them to copy. But if you use references to observe, stylize, simplify, and put them into our visual library, then slowly that becomes part of your imagination. So if you've been feeling bad for using references, I hope this video helped you see them a little differently. You don't need to force yourself to draw everything from imagination right away. Start by observing, simplifying, stylizing, and slowly building that visual library in your head. And if you want more guidance, I have 2 ways that you can keep practicing with me. My drawing membership is always open, and inside you will find all my step-by-step lessons, tutorials, and a sweet community where you can share your work, ask questions, and stay accountable. I'm also opening a few spots for one-on-one drawing guidance. So if you want to talk through your current struggles, build a better daily drawing plan, or have me look at your artwork and show you exactly where to improve, you can apply through the link in the video description. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in my next video.